Yeah. That's cool. Question about the middle school program. Is it something where how do I know if the microphone's working? Test 1, 2. Okay. Yes, that's good. Test. Test. Am I getting feedback? Test. All right. That's cool. Hey, Jane. There's Sadie. Oh, I want to switch cameras, don't I? Oh, I'm not seeing my camera. What's wrong? Microphone is working well, but I don't feel like the camera. Come on. Not responding to this. Do I need to put this? Weird. The thing.
But it was actually good.
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. It doesn't say that's okay, that's okay. Test 1, 2. Oh. Let's see, do I have another? Let's see, all right. Let's see if this works. Hello.
Not keeping up for like, well, it's not really in my control. I know.
Good.
Switch the chair. This switches it out. This one has a broken neck. Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh.
You guys didn't know you were being watched, did you?
Wait, hang on. Where is that thing?
Someone has a broken desk. Should I leave it out this way?
Tell me what I'm looking at.
Actually pretty
It's
cool.
there, it's in the corner.
Oh.
Wait, wow. Wait, where is it?
Hey, Jenae, can you hear me?
This is us.
I want to see if our mic system is working. Can you, you got me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, good. You're a little quiet. Can you sing a song for us or something like that, for a second?
cannot sing you a song. However, let me just make sure I have.
Talking is fine. I'm cranking your volume a little bit. Say something else.
Yeah, I'm on the right mic, just double checking.
And can
I'm
you
happy
hear, Jane, can you say something? I just want to see how this mic's working. Or, yeah, just merely say something.
Hello.
You heard Just Maylee saying hello?
I did, thank you.
Perfect. All right. I think, so it's kind of a weird angle on our class, but I think it does give you a sense of us. I don't think I can pull out any more.
Oh, how does it, how can?
That is. You can go in and out, but I think this is more or less what you want. You're, I don't, Chris has not arrived yet. Do you know if Michael's definitely coming?
I've not checked with him, but I could just double check right now.
Okay, Chris.
His office is right across the hall from mine.
Okay.
Let me check.
The desk is broken, so I thought.
Oh, this one's broken. Okay, I'll stick it over here. That's fine. Okay. Welcome.
How's it going?
Good.
Realized Heather was kind of a late addition, you know,
Right.
So when we get to the presentation, I apologize again, she's not listed.
That's
Well, most people know her.
we can handle that. We're a forgiving group here. You can see.
Michael will be joining us.
Okay, great. Is he in the room next door to you or something?
He's just across the hall today, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good spot for you. Now, do you want to give me a USB stick, or do you want me to find something online, or?
I can loan this one to you, but I can't give it.
I don't, I'll just,
There you go.
wow, that's. Neat out of. Oh, you know what? Darn it. I do not have a straight up USB. Hey, come on in, make yourselves at home. Choose a seat wherever you want. You can sit anywhere.
Oh, I know everyone.
That's what I was saying, the group like.
I was like, oh, literally, like, yeah, I think maybe only one or two of you I don't know. Oh, hi, Jenae.
Hi, Heather. Hi, Chris.
Solar games are pretty serious.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird, it's mixed sitting here, cause it's like sun directly on your back, but also you are right behind the air coils.
Yeah.
Freezing out
Really? So
USBs.
you feel the cold and the.
Phasing out USB.
We don't know yet because we
New laptops that you get from the college. Actually,
Yeah, mine, I have like one.
yeah, oh, you have one and then you have USB-Cs. This one's got nothing.
It's stupid, we should be able to like do all that at the same time. Yes, here's the one, you'll like when I share the phone. The way we wrote the policy was like, once we know that the party is on, she'll ask the child, she can like.
I did put it in the box.
Oh, you did? Did you send me a link?
Yeah, it'll probably happen, I don't see why, because housing is not allowed to give like the general feelings, which is for like the information or to the thing.
You want me to send the link?
We're just, we're getting a presentation up here. Hey, Michael.
Only one person's.
Welcome. Sent that email, right? I got an email link or something.
Okay. So that was piece like.
Yeah.
No, I Christian girl.
Better for me to download that. Is it gonna do? kind of function right in there, I guess is the question. I'm skeptical. Yeah.
Ruby said that. You are.
Put you in that spot. Be like seriously on the spot. Different presentation for you. Alright.
Hey, Michael.
Hello.
Great, sounds like we can hear you well. Get us started. So it's a real pleasure and honor to have with us today both local folks who are involved in Oberlin sustainability and the Sustainable Infrastructure Project, and some of the team from Evergreen, which is a group that we hired. God, how long ago was that, Michael? It feels like almost a decade you've been working.
It was 2015.
2015, so we're coming up on almost a decade of working with this team. And I'll just say before we start here that I've been at Oberlin a long time now, and I've worked with an awful lot of different firms that the college has hired to do various things for the college, especially things around building renovations, projects building new buildings, projects involving the overall energy systems for the college. And I will say that for most of my years, I've experienced a great deal of frustration in working with these contractors. And I honest to God don't think we've ever worked with a team that has been more collaborative than Evergreen. It's just been, I'm sure I've been frustrated with them at times, and I'm quite sure they've been frustrated with me at times. But overall, I really don't think we've ever had a team who's been so collaborative in helping Oberlin to achieve its goals. And in some cases, which is very unusual for outside contractors, actually pushing us in directions that I would like to see us go in, particularly when it comes to thinking about the benefits or the potential benefits of SIP, not just for the Oberlin College community, but how can we get something that actually works well with the city as a whole. It's such a big project. Thinking about that integration with the larger community is so important. And I don't think we've achieved all of the goals that we started with. I think there's still a lot of opportunities for achieving those goals. And in the partnership with Evergreen, I know that they're enthusiastic and always willing to look for those opportunities of how can we expand out the range of people who are benefiting from these projects. So I just want just a note of appreciation at the start. Before we actually go into these folks introducing themselves, saying a little bit about their roles in the project, how communication fits into that, and then going into a bit of a presentation that they'll give on sort of the project and their roles in the project. I want to take a step back as a class and just talk a little bit about these next couple weeks, because as we've discussed at the start of this class, we're kind of front loading this year's class with SIP focused content because we've got an external deadline that we're trying to integrate with in this course. And that external deadline is an event that we've talked a little bit about. It's the homecoming event. This is basically how Oberlin is running, Oberlin College is running reunions right now. So they have this period in the fall and September weekend when they invite alums in. They also, that also coincides intentionally with inviting trustees from Oberlin College come in, and the trustees are obviously very important decision makers. They're the folks who ultimately worked to approve the hiring of Evergreen actually 10 years ago. So we have this opportunity as communicators in this class to connect with alums that I've talked with you about before, and that is Chris has been very involved in sort of the orchestration of how do we feature SIP during that weekend. And as I've mentioned to you, there's a set of events that we want to engage students in this class in. So Chris and I will be giving some talks on Fridays, and on Friday of that, this is 2 weeks from tomorrow, 2 weeks from tomorrow. And what we hope to have is groups in this class prepared to talk with alums as they come out of there. So Chris is going to give an overview of the SIP. I'm going to talk particularly about SIP and education and the stories in particular. And then you have an opportunity to demo that for alums afterwards and to do a little bit of focus group testing to see what they're interested in so that we get a little bit more feedback on how these stories are resonating with people. So that's one opportunity. There are going to be SIP tours taking place that, again, Chris is orchestrating together with some other staff. And on those tours, we'll have students in this class doing sort of micro presentations of these SIP stories as they travel through the AJLC as one stop on their tour. And then on Saturday morning, the president is giving a talk on the college in general. It's not about SIP, but we've been allocated time after her talk. Was that at 10 or 11? 10 to do more user testing in the hotel, engaging alumni in interacting with these stories we develop. Obviously, this is most centrally related to the two groups that have projects that directly relate to the SIP, the group that is explicitly working on the stories and focus group testing, but also the group that's working on the Science Center case. Jenae is important in a whole bunch of ways, but she's been working with us on sort of thinking through a redesign of that case to really highlight some materials from the SIP project, posters related to the SIP project. So Jenae is going to be an important person we collaborate with on that piece of it. But so essentially today is an opportunity for us. We had some reading associated with the SIP. It's an opportunity to take these experts who are sort of, breathing and living SIP. Heather a little bit less. She's living and breathing SIP too, but not quite as much as the other team members here. To sort of really have these experts here for this first discussion. We're going to do a couple SIP tours, I think. One of them is on next Thursday, a week from today. We're going to travel around with Brandon. Probably Chris is going to tag along on that one as well. Talk about it. We're working towards getting, bless you, another SIP tour set up with some contractors who can show us some different stuff. I'm so behind in email. I don't know if you responded to me or not.
I saw it.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll figure it out. Anyway, that's sort of the context for today's class. Just to get your head thinking a little bit about the content that you will be involved in presenting in 2 weeks, I thought I'd take a moment. You have seen this content, but just to run through the kinds of things we're talking about for SIP stories and user testing, so that's in your head, before these guys give you the overview and talk a little bit about their roles. So I now said a lot of things that I had on paper, so I'm not gonna go to what I was planning on going to, but I will go to this one for a second. And Jenae and Michael, are you seeing my screen now? Just so I know that you're.
Yep, you're good.
Taking a little while to get into mode. So Michael might not have actually seen this. So Michael, if you have any comments on this, glad to get your feedback on some point on this. This is the very beginnings of the SIP story. So between now and 2 weeks from now, we will refine this to the point where there's the capacity for someone you're showing this to interact, you or someone else to interact with a touch controller and go to different parts of this story. The story it's not going to be done in any way because it only needs to be done enough for user testing. But the goal of this story is to, in various ways, tell the story of how the system works, why it's important, how it fits with Oberlin's carbon neutral goals, and make it fun for people to understand how do resources flow through this campus and how can I, as a student or a visitor to the campus, how can I engage and contribute to helping this project meet its goals in terms of Oberlin achieving carbon neutrality, me better managing, how I use the controls I have access to in my dorms. When should I open my windows? When should I close my windows? all of those things. So its goal again is to be sort of a fun explanation of how the system works and how you can engage in it. So again, you'll see this is super drafty. You've seen some of this before. There'll be pieces of this that sort of tell the story of like, how did we get where we were? What were we doing before the SIP project? Why do we feel like we needed to change from the SIP project? Oops, I didn't mean for it to be advancing like that. What is the district heat system? How does the system work? These sorts of things. And you can see we've got some sort of templates here that we haven't even filled in all the templates, kind of describing how the system works, the history of the system. Once upon a time, not that long ago, 14 years ago, we were heating with several trucks of coal that would show up every day at the central heating plant that we burned in our central heating plant. Then we transitioned to using natural gas in that plant. We're going to continue using some natural gas in the plant, but we're significantly shifting from natural gas to a heat pump system. Again, this is very drafty. The text isn't really here yet, but you're getting the concepts of how the storytelling is going to go. And so your role is going to be to explain how this storytelling works and get feedback from our alums, whether they think it's interesting, what they're interested in, what they're learning from it. So anyways, these are just, again, examples of sort of the kind of visual graphics, the visual storytelling, and how we're integrating text, text together with visual storytelling, together with, real-time animations that will show exactly what's happening right now with the system. So just giving you that sense of how this will work. Again, all of this is early prototype content now. It'll be much more developed prototype by a couple of weeks from now, but just showing you the kind of like gauges. So these would be displaying how much total energy is the college using right now, how much of it is electricity, how much of it is natural gas, how much solar production are we getting on the 10 acres of solar we have, how much heat is flowing to the campus, how's heat flowing, giving people that sort of like 30,000 foot level understanding of how does this system work, why is it important. So again, I'm just kind of, this probably won't be there, but that's kind of examples of some of the text. Actually, these particular slides here were created by a group in this class last year, sort of showing how things change between winter and summer. And then also this idea of showing in real time this pattern of resource use in different buildings on campus. So, showing the heat flows, the heating loop, the cooling loop, how that's working as heat flows by, and then ultimately visualizing that in virtual orbs that are different sizes and different colors depending on how much heat energy is being used on campus in different buildings at a particular time, how much cooling energy is being used in different buildings at different times. Over recent history, last week's worth of data or last day's worth of data. And then, again, for electricity, where's electricity going on campus? How does that play out in terms of who's using electricity? And this is all faked data right now, but I'm quite sure the Science Center is going to be a giant blob like that. Mud in the Science Center will be giant blobs, that much we know from past history. Water use on campus, similar concept. Again, the challenge for us as communicators is how do we take this complex set of data, translate it into a form that is easily accessible, meaningful, engaging, and empowering in terms of decision-making to a non-technical audience of students, staff, visitors. How do we do that? So that's kind of our challenge. I kind of wanted to show that before we sort of turn this over to our guests. Now, what I'd like to do first, and it's a little last minute in sending out this email, but I'd like to do a little go around of our guests and ask each of you to say a little bit about what has your role been in the SIP project, but also to say a little bit about when you communicate about the project, who's your target audience and what messages are you trying to get across? And then once we've done that, we'll go into the presentation and you guys can say a bit more. Does that sound fair enough? Is there anyone who wants to start on this?
I'd be happy to start since communications is my job.
Okay.
I'm Jenae Batt, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Evergreen Energy. I've been working on the SIP project really since the beginning, but one of my coworkers left and I took over her role as primary on the communication side since 2021. And I first want to ask, before I answer John's questions, I first want to ask, are any of you seniors? So you have been here the entire time. If you were at Oberlin your freshman and sophomore years, you've been here the entire time that SIP has been going on. And the biggest amount of construction is done. So congratulations for living through all 4 years. So we're at a very exciting milestone with the project. It's great. So as far as my role, I help with communicating about the project on campus as well as off campus, and really helping to support the teams on campus with the work they're trying to do to communicate the information. There are a few audiences I work with when we're talking about neighbors, say neighbors to the geothermal wells, or the geothermal drilling, we really want them to understand what's going on, why we're doing it, and what the potential impacts might be to them. So that messaging is very different than speaking to a class or trying to make sure that the city council or the board of trustees understands the value of these projects. So I've kind of supported a range of audiences, a range of messaging, but really try to develop a full breadth of messaging so that we're able to pull from that for any of these specific audiences.
But just to say one other thing about Jenae, so she's like, for instance, played a central role in the development of the iconography, or at least inherited that role, that iconography that represents there, which we've been trying to use because it's a branding and style that Evergreen collaborated with Oberlin College to develop the sort of look of buildings and that sort of thing. So we, as people kind of inheriting that branding, which was approved by Oberlin College, are trying to develop new content that's consistent with the branding that Jenae and her team were involved in developing, so that we're not all creating like different stuff that looks different. So if you see the signs around campus, there's a reason why what I just showed you in that micro presentation looks a lot like that, because that's our model. We want our content to live in the same world as their content.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Ahern. I lead the engineering and development arm of Evergreen, and I've been acting as the primary lead on this program since we started working with the college back in 2015. My communications with folks are very widely. It can be communication, financial performance on the project with college leadership. It can be communication with building stakeholders, students, staff, faculty regarding upcoming work that could be happening at individual buildings that those folks reside in. Or it could be communicating with the broader community, with the campus community, with your neighbors about why we're disrupting, what disruption is going to look like in a particular area, and how soon that's going to be completed, which is what most of them care about the most. So it's been a fun journey over the last 10 years or 9 years of all different levels of communication with darn near every person in town, it seems like.
I feel like I get an enormous amount of email traffic that at least has Michael's signature underneath it about what particular driving routes are going to be obstructed by the activities going on. I feel like that's probably, in terms of volume, Michael, that's what I feel like is the largest messaging I get from you, is like, where are the disruptions going to be?
Yeah, I'm not going to miss having to write those every week.
Heather, do you want to go?
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Heather Adelman. I'm the sustainability manager. I actually know almost everyone in this room, so that's awesome. So as a sustainability manager, I help implement or have my hand in some way most sustainability related projects on campus. That can range from things like the SIP, but also alternative energy, the eco-rep program, waste reduction, recycling, composting, the great work of the RCT, policy development, reporting, et cetera. So my specific role as it relates to the SIP, mostly supporting Jenae and others on communication and outreach. I like to think of my role as trying to raise the sustainability IQ on campus in general. My personal goal on the SIP is that at some point soon, you could stop any single person on campus and they would be able to answer a simple, like, what is the SIP? And they could at least give you some sort of answer. So things that I do to make that a reality, help support the tours. We put, fun facts in the daily Eco Obi tip, which you might see in the digest, sadly all the way at the bottom, but that's where it's at. Working on things for orientation. So this year was new. We trained all the RAs in the PAL groups on lots of things, but particularly on the SIP and how students can interact with the systems in their spaces to make them more efficient, whether that's closing windows and doors or not blocking fan coil units, et cetera. So
I'll just say that little piece that Heather just mentioned is, I think, something we're really gonna wanna try to think about how we highlight that both in the presentation, the sort of the digital presentation, but also in the display case. Like, where are the places that students can intervene? Like, what should you do in your room specifically to be a good member of the Oberlin community and contribute to the performance of the system?
yeah, because it's a very sophisticated system, but honestly, a lot of very, very simple behaviors can really make or break it. And so we have a brand new website that we just published maybe last week, Jenae, on it's called Occupant Resources. There's videos that students made. We have graphics on, gradients of what, how hot it is outside and when you should think about closing and opening windows, things like that. So
So getting that information into the display case and into this presentation, what Heather's talking about, that's a real resource for our 2 student projects that are particularly focused on that.
And then I guess the final thing I'd mention is I also help co-teach a class in the psychology department on advanced methods related to community-based social marketing. So working with students on, very similar to this class, right? Like real life problems on campus. This semester, we are tackling fan coil units and some other things in rooms to see how we can improve their efficiency.
Speaking of fan coil units, I think I'm gonna kick this one on because this is getting all.
But that's it. So
It's just really noisy. All right, Chris, you're on.
Sure, okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Norman, I'm Senior Director for Energy and Sustainability here on campus. I'm like the newbie on the block, right? So I just started like a year ago, coming into the project at the end of phase 3, now through phase 4. My role is really at the sort of strategic level with the Office of Energy and Sustainability, but interacting with Evergreen and our contractors, part of the communication. So for setting not only the implementation strategy or following through for SIP, but also thinking about other aspects of sustainability and energy management here on campus. The SIP is a major investment. The campus has put so much time and effort through it. We're just getting ready to commission the system this fall. All the communication resources, all the outreach, all that stuff is really going to be critical, as John said, and others here. It's really helping that we've got a consistent effort throughout campus, looking at our different audiences, what's going to work. That's where I think that Heather's work in looking at behavior change is really going to be critical, because in some ways the technology was like the easy part. It's the behavior, it's the people and how we're using it, what our experience is, how that can be a feedback loop as we continue to improve our interaction in sustaining carbon neutrality or even getting to carbon positive, right? So my audience is, it's all across campus. I mean, there's student interaction, not just OES employees, but the classrooms and then the walks that we give, the tours that we give. But then also, as I sit through the OACM meetings, the owner architect meetings, looking at project updates, trying to think how are we connected to the rest of the departments, the campus community, what's the best that I can interpret to it, what our Oberlin community's experiences, and just continue to kind of facilitate the efficient and effective implementation and follow through on the project. It's kind of all of that level. We're going to talk about the SIP and where we are, but there's some things I'm going to underscore for not just our 4th year student, but from the students, for the rest of you, because really SIP is something that is student driven. It came from our environmental commitment, our climate commitment is very much led by the student in the campus community. So how we can continue to keep that forward, you'll see as we're looking at it, we're coming at the end of 25. So when we look at the timeline, but it's not going to end in 2025, right? So as students are coming into campus, as students are going through their collegiate life here and becoming alumni, path that we're creating, we do that together. So just sort of seeding some of the conversation.
Great stuff. So hopefully people are getting a sense of how important communication is in all these different contexts. These guys are gonna talk for a while, but I was a small class. If you guys want to interrupt, I think people are gonna be okay with that. If you want to stop people, there'll be some time at the end for questions, but yeah, you're on, man.
Awesome, okay. Oh, carbon neutrality, I've heard of that. Right. So did you know that this project is established 69,000 feet of pipe, the distribution system. So this is actually coming from the GeoWell field into campus throughout campus. And then our geothermal tubing, over 1 million feet of geothermal tubing in the well field itself. So lots of work, lots of infrastructure that is going on. So we've already met us. Skip over this. I've got context at the end of the display. I didn't have Heather because at the time when I was drafting this, yeah. But
hey, you guys, Michael and Jenae, you are seeing the presentation, right?
Yep, we're good.
Just wanted to check.
Okay. So getting ready, as John was saying, we're kind of looking at some of our outcomes for the presentation. And again, that broad introduction to the Sustainable Infrastructure Program. And again, program, not project. I think some of us have adopted project, but in my mind, project is a very definite end. It's much more finite, whereas program, this is chapter 1, if you will, right? So I think it's important to emphasize because this is going to be iterative. Well, this is a major step. You're converting over to geothermal from steam, hot water from steam. Major step for us. It's going to be the care of this thing and how we operate. Goals for the project at Oberlin College and Evergreen. So we've already started to talk about that. And then, of course, supporting you guys thinking about especially the upcoming presentations during homecoming. So I'm going to do a little more as far as context for the project, and then we'll just sort of trade on and off. So again, for Heather, Jenae, Michael, just you're welcome to jump in as they're going through. The college has made these commitments, these national commitments, along with other peer institutions around climate. So specifically, we have our commitments related to our carbon neutrality and our commitment to resilience. And these fit broadly under a climate commitment, a climate action that is organized, facilitated through Second Nature, so the third party that's facilitating this. The vision for these to come out and put in writing as an institution was really something that was done, even though in many ways we weren't quite sure how we were going to get there. But it's part of the vision. In fact, this building really helped set that in motion. We'll see the timeline here. But I think it's important to emphasize that there is a structure here. There's a pattern that we're following, and we're benchmarking with other institutions, and that it's been years in the making. But that it will also be, frankly, all of our, throughout the rest of our lives, right, as far as our climate commitment and action. So I have the environmental policy, there's environmental implementation strategy that the campus has. There's a climate action plan that Oberlin, the city has, the college is working very closely with, different ways in which we are engaging around our climate action. Okay, this is a bit of an eye chart. You really have to be visionary to see it. Okay, so this is, I know it's hard to see. This, again, much of this information is on our website. At the end of it, I've got the OES website. Just do some small research, but and the SIP did not simply fall out of a tree, right? This literally is something that has been years in the making, and so we developed, with Evergreen's help, this this timeline to help put in context our current work as we're closing in, on phase 4 of SIP. To the left there, the climate commitment that coincides with the creation of the AGLC. So, almost 25 years ago, Andrew Joseph Lewis Center becomes the first certified net zero commercial building in the country. It's a visionary work, not just for the design, et cetera, but for how it was created. It really set in motion many of the actions we're seeing around campus today. As I mentioned, we have a carbon commitment that came around 2006, and as we move across, there's the transition away from coal was put in motion, and we were able to implement that in 2014. So again, coal goes away, but we replace that fossil fuel with a different fossil gas, fossil fuel, fossil gas, in this case, natural gas. But by bringing Evergreen on board, we began to take real serious planning steps to look at how can we achieve carbon neutrality by the 2025 commitment. The science commitment was made in 2015, and as we moved forward, you can see different specific steps that have happened that led us up to today.
So in 2015, we started working on a carbon neutrality plan for the college. And at that time, we had identified that, and the college knew this as well, that the heating system was by far the largest contributor to your carbon emissions. And as Chris and John noted earlier, this pie chart was from prior to the elimination of coal. Really what, if you were to look at this chart, say in 2019, it essentially would be all gas that would be covering the coal side as well as the gas that continues to get burned. Next slide, please. But one of the challenges and what turned this really from a carbon neutrality plan into a sustainable infrastructure program was that the college, beyond the fact that the heating system needed to be addressed from a sustainability perspective, it also needed to be addressed because of the failing infrastructure that was in place. And this pipe you see here, this is just on the on the west side of Warner Center, in the bowl. And what was fortuitous to get the program implemented within the colleges, I was actually presenting in 2019, in December of 2019, to the board of trustees, when this happened. And so there was actually steam coming out of the ground in the middle of December because the steam system had failed at a very bad time to have the steam system failing. And at that point, the board decided we have to get to hot water. They recognized that counting on this steam system to continue to heat your college buildings, campus buildings, was just not a good decision. So next slide, please. So really there was a call to action at that point. And as we came into 2020, the action was we need to replace the steam system with a more efficient, more reliable hot water system. But there's some other campus infrastructure needs that also needed to be addressed. So while we targeted getting to 2025 carbon neutrality by 2025, the college decided it wanted to have much more cooling on campus than it previously had, because there was more and more summer programming. We needed to eliminate the antiquated hot steam system and install the current generation of hot water system. We also needed to replace antiquated chilled water infrastructure, and then also address some other infrastructure needs around fire protection and control systems and electrical infrastructure and fiber networks. And doing all of that while still being financially responsible, and also always making sure we keep an eye toward integrating with the core campus mission of education. Next slide. So we identified and set out several key principles that were very important for us as we began detailed planning and implementation planning for the overall sustainable infrastructure program. And again, that's first and foremost around carbon reduction and achieving the 2025 goal, but also making sure we're enhancing reliability and driving down operational costs for the system. And as John had noted earlier, making sure this is a benefit that's not only available to the campus community, but also the broader Oberlin community. Next slide. So while we were looking at different solutions, actually, when we did our carbon neutrality plan originally in 2016, our recommendation was actually to capture waste heat from the landfill generation station over on the east edge of town, right by the interstate. That facility generates electricity from methane that comes from the landfill. And the waste heat coming off of that facility just goes up into the atmosphere, and it was more heat than the college would actually need. The amount of heat that was generated there was about, the college's needs in the middle of the winter was about 25% of the total heat that's available from that facility. As we worked through detailed design and planning for how we could incorporate that heat and actually run a pipeline from the landfill all the way to campus, two pipelines, a supply and a return. We actually got designed all the way to a point where we were negotiating the contract with the landfill generation operator. In 2019, that operator determined that they were going to change how they operated that facility. And they actually retired half of their generation assets, and they're now selling that gas to the RIN markets out in California, the California vehicle market. So we relooked at the solution, and we determined geothermal was the next best solution for the campus. And part of the reason that was viewed most favorably is because we will be able to do that on college land, and we will be able to control our own destiny from a heating and cooling perspective. All of these solutions that you see in this bullet point list were all modeled out, all evaluated as possible solutions to get to carbon neutrality. Geothermal just ended up being the best option after that landfill gas generation change. Next slide.
Sometimes it doesn't.
It's 5 slides.
Yeah.
I think it's just this next slide is so has so much imagery on it, it's slow to move. So the diagram that you'll see in a second here is something you've seen around campus. It's essentially just lays out how it works, and John really touched on this earlier with the video or with the video graphics that he had shown. Essentially, we've got the well field up on the north side of campus, up in the old intramural practice fields, which will be new intramural practice fields next year. And we run water through that well field, comes back into the central plant where we have heat pumps. The heat pumps simultaneously generate hot water and chilled water. And then we send out that hot water and chilled water to the campus. We also have an air source heat pump that will be at the central plant that will just pull, literally as it sounds, pull heat out of the air and put it in our hot water system. You can do that until it gets to be about 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. At that point, it's not efficient to operate, but anything that's over, anytime the outside air temperature is above about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, it's an efficient means of being able to provide heating to campus buildings. And what we have done as part of this overall program is we've essentially about doubled the amount of buildings that receive cooling. We send out 135 degree Fahrenheit hot water. We get 100 degree water back at the building after that's gone through individual campus buildings, and you've used that in your radiators or your fan coil units. And then on the cooling side, we send 44 degree chilled water out to buildings, and they send back about 60 degree Fahrenheit chilled water after they've run that through their fan coil units and their air handling units to provide air conditioning. The well field, we've got 850 wells up at the well field, 600 feet deep each one. The wells are actually spaced out 20 foot on center. So it's a big massive grid of wells that you can up on that entire practice field, or essentially the western half of the practice field. Go to the next slide, please.
Easier said than done, Michael, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So as Jenae had talked about, and as the one senior in the room could acknowledge, it was a 4-year phase project. We really sequenced we started our work down on the southern part of campus because that's where the steam system was most concerning. So in 2021, when we began work, we began in May of 2021. That was our most onerous, most challenging year of construction because A, because of COVID, B, because we didn't start work until essentially June 1st. And we needed to get all the way down to Lord Saunders from the central plant in the Wilder Bowl, or next to the Wilder Bowl. And so it was quite a complex first year of work. And quite honestly, also the construction team was new, and our whole program team was new. And so we were building the plane as we were taking off that first year. Subsequent years have gotten more and more effective and efficient. And I think we all saw quite a successful fourth year of construction this year, just because we really hit our pace after that. As noted earlier, the geothermal well field construction started in May of 23. And it is all wrapped up at this point. The field restoration has commenced, and we're intending to have planting done, grass planting done about in the next 35, 40 days. Actually even a little less than that, with an expectation then that turf will take hold this fall, and the fields will be made back available to the campus when school starts next September. And then, as I noted earlier, the well field is a square grid essentially on the western 2/3 of the intramural fields. But we do have accommodations to add wells if this system is expanded, if we can achieve one of the goals John alluded to earlier. We really want this to be a community asset, not just a campus asset. We want to connect the hospital. We want to connect city buildings. We want to connect the schools. And we have the space to add well fields. Our piping has been configured to be able to add wells in the event that occurs.
Are we on the right slide for you, Michael? We sort of got.
No, you're perfect, John. Just kind of been bouncing around a little bit. And again, this just visually shows what I had mentioned earlier about the sequencing. What you see in the dark blue is everything we did in the first year, including the buildings that we worked in the first year. In the aqua green is what we did second year, which we kind of finished out everything south of Lorraine. And then we also started to do some of our North Campus buildings, Union Street, North Langston. In addition to that, we also installed the pipe that goes up to the geothermal well field, runs along the western edge of the soccer field and past the track, and then up toward right off that southwest corner by the solar array. Year 3 was finishing out North Campus, and then this last summer, getting over to the art complex and hitting Bosworth and Asia. Next slide. From a financial standpoint, we looked at a number of different solutions for how this program would be implemented, how we would fund it. We did look at the potential of setting up a nonprofit district energy business that would 100% fund all of the infrastructure that was needed to do this work. But it was determined that the best solution, given the markets back in 2020, was for the college to actually issue the debt to do this work. We issued the debt in 2 tranches, one in the fall of 2021, and then the second one last March, in March of 23, for a total of around $145 million of climate certified green bonds. The program in totality it will end up costing just under $175 million, but we will be going after a rebate, or we will be pursuing a rebate through the Inflation Reduction Act, which should give the college back somewhere around 35 to 40% of the total investment through a direct pay rebate, because of some policy that was passed in January of 2023. These climate certified green bonds, Oberlin College is only the second institution, college campus, to obtain that certification, and the first for an energy system. Stanford University was the first, but that was for campus building work. That climate certified green bonds classification makes those bonds extremely attractive, meaning the interest rate, the interest rate on those bonds was very low. In fact, it was the lowest interest rate the college had ever realized on any of its debt, because that's a more attractive investment for the investment community. And that certification was a bit of a process we went through. There's a third-party entity that audited us to give us that certification. And it really was around measurement, the fact that we're measuring how we're performing, the fact that the way we structured the overall implementation of this program, the discipline we've put into our procurement efforts and our recycling efforts, and some of the other key goals that we had as a result of this. As a result of the construction of the overall system, the amount of greenhouse gas emission reduction that is coming from this project. And then just as John mentioned earlier, just around the discipline we have around metering and measurement post-implementation, so that we can prove out that what we said this project was going to achieve, it actually does achieve.
If I could pause you just for 1 second, Michael, because I really want to just reiterate the importance of your point. People often get into this narrative about how doing green things is more expensive. We got better financing for this, vastly better financing for Oberlin College to do a project that they basically needed to do. The infrastructure was failing. We got much better financing for it because it was a green project, and it was very innovative. Like Michael said, we were institution number 2 to do climate certified green bonds on this, and it attracted a lot of investors who wouldn't have invested in this project if we hadn't done that. So thinking about the larger narrative, this directly counters that narrative that a lot of people like to put out there. Well, it's more expensive to do green stuff, it's green stuff or jobs. You think about the number of people working on this project, all of these people are involved in the new green economy. Every construction worker who was hired on this project is involved in the new green economy. So I really want to drive that home. All right, Michael, sorry I interrupted you. You go.
No, that's great. I think this was my last slide, actually. Yeah.
I can cover these next few. So communications and outreach, there are a few project goals around this. So it was not only about making sure that people understand which buildings would be closed, where they could find their wayfinding, and all of those kinds of things, but really helping people to understand the bigger picture of why this project has moved forward and why it is so important and innovative within peer institutions. So there is a program website. The site this is a screenshot of it on the right, that is actually managed by Evergreen. And that includes our project updates. We also, for a little while, you can still go on there and look at, there's a webcam on the geo field that you can still go and check under that SIP construction. If we have tours that we've coordinated with OES or that Michael is in town hosting, those will also be listed on the website. We don't, you should trust OES on their schedule coming up better than what's here now. So really making sure that we had the program website where you could always find the information needed. We also sent out weekly emails and text messages. That email list was about 300 people and people could sign up for those. Same with text messages, you were able to sign up for those. Then we had some key people we put on that list. There have been project tours throughout. We are happy to knowledge share both with industry as well as other peer institutions. So we've hosted tours and answered questions for all kinds of groups that are interested in what Oberlin's doing. And then there's been a great deal of city and community engagement. You all understand how the college is central to Oberlin. And so it's from the beginning, it was really important that both city administrators as well as city council really understood what this project was, so that if they were getting questions, they could either answer the questions or redirect to someone. And then just making sure that the community understood the value of what Oberlin was doing, especially since it meant their streets might be closed for a while. But then also them understanding the potential of this expanding into the community. So we've been talking about those points really since before construction was ever happening on campus. And then there's several program videos. We've had some interns that have made videos, including the ones that Heather's mentioned, that can explain to you how to interact with your own heating and cooling system in a campus building. And then the college actually made this video that's on the carbon neutrality website. Next slide. Sorry. We have wildfire smoke in Minnesota.
No way.
Hmm. So one of the things I like to say about this project is that there are carbon reductions and Oberlin College is becoming carbon neutral. But the other thing that we are doing is we are teaching all the students that have been involved every year about this project, about how energy systems work, about how energy systems in buildings that they live and work in work, and what the potential is. So a big important thing about this project is the students learning and understanding and going out into the world and having a better understanding of their energy system so that as citizens, you know what your town, city, community is doing, and also that you understand what your building is doing and what the potential is out there. So to me, carbon neutrality is one goal. The other goal is just educating students and making sure you have the knowledge around this project because it is such a valuable local asset to you. So we have done curriculum integration throughout the project and before the project. We have had internships and special student projects as well as research projects. We're happy to come to class anytime. You can ask your teachers to engage with us. And then we've done also parents weekends and alumni weekends. They love those tours. We're happy to host them. The energy dashboard is the dashboard that John has worked on. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. This project has had 75% recycled construction waste. The subcontractor, Mortensen Construction, this has been something we've worked with them on. And so this is making sure that that cardboard and steel and all those things that are coming out of buildings is getting reused in the best way possible. And so this 75% is high for a construction project like this, and we're very proud of that. This does include the first 3 years of construction. We don't have numbers on year 4 yet. And then just really making sure that that we are following the financial stewardship, but also that is a story that we're making sure we tell it. So. I don't know that this is my slide to share, but I'm happy to. So
I was leading with you, Jenae, because I thought it's, as far as telling the story and using graphics, distilling it down, I just think it's an excellent example, and I didn't want to take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So in addition to really getting to the carbon neutrality goal, this project is saving money on the operations side year over year, but we are also saving water. So this is a result of the steam system was not getting condensate return by having a closed loop heating and cooling system. We're just reusing the water, reheating the water and sending it back out to buildings, or recooling the water and sending it back to buildings. So water in the system is not going down the drain. So that's $5 million gallons of water per year. That also reduces the impact, that 4 million gallons, to sewer discharge. And then we originally estimated that the energy efficiency improvements, and that is some from the energy system, but also, like South Hall got all new windows, and there have been some other energy efficiency measures that we've done either before or during this project to really take advantage of the new system. Is there anything else you would add on that, Michael?
No, I think you touched on it.
So, yeah, just very exciting project, great results. I cannot wait for year 2 when we're actually able to come back and give the actuality of all these numbers. So it's just very exciting to see this coming to fruition. So just to give you a milestone update, the building work is done, the distribution work is done, the geo well fields are ready to serve the system. There's some additional work that needs to happen in the plants, but this is what they call in construction substantial completion. So it's very exciting. And then there will be a phase of commissioning, just really fine tuning the system and make sure it's working the way it needs to, both through one heating season and one cooling season. So you'll see us around campus still. So. Yeah,
and one of the things that we're doing as part of the wrap up, and I know this, John will like to hear this, is this project's been a 4-year project, and it's been a very aggressive implementation schedule with a lot of different activities occurring at the same time. What we want to make sure, though, is when this system is up and operational, well, it's already operational, but when we are fully commissioned out, we're now going back through every single building that we renovated, and we're doing what's called retro commissioning or recommissioning, essentially reproving out and rechecking every single building to make sure its control systems and its overall mechanical electrical systems are all working exactly as we had designed. Because too many times projects like this can get implemented and everybody just goes away and goes somewhere to the next project. And ultimately, the systems don't run like they should. And that's something we absolutely do not want to have happen here. So we're being very disciplined and methodical about going back to every single building, starting here in about the next 30 days to confirm and fine tune each building to operate exactly how it was intended.
And Michael, I think that's such a critical point, operating the buildings as intended, as designed, right? Because as we've had just from, since then, like in the HLC, since it was built, you know, we go through life and change different things and wind up coping in different mechanisms, in different ways. But this process that Michael's describing is going back through systematically, making sure that everything's dialed in, you know, so whether it's balancing throughout the building or looking at controls, make sure everything's been updated, just really make sure it's gonna run as designed, because all the efficiencies we're talking about really are relying on the design. So the feedback loop that we're getting from our building occupants is also really important. That's where Heather and the rest of the OES team, you know, play a critical role, because the training that we're doing, the education, the resources we're providing, but also the feedback loop that we're receiving to help make sure that we're able to, the rest of the team can follow through. It's again, it's like first 4 years, way to go. I feel like we've got another year or two to really dial it in. That's just the ongoing work that we have. Okay, so the last slide we have here is just again the timeline, and my point with it again is just you can see all the work leading up to it. 2025, our work's not done, and so you know if you're thinking about communication on how you know, what SIP is, I would say what sustainability is related to it, campus community, and visitors, etc. Just know this is the beginning or a continuation of a conversation of what's next. You know, this is part of Oberlin, right? We look over the horizon. We're leading the way, but by doing that, we're engaging and providing equity for all of our stakeholders because it matters. And it's not just here in the city, right, and on campus, but the region and that ripple effect nationally. So we want to tap into our collective lived experience, the vision, the hopes that we have, and apply this, because again, our work is just beginning in some ways. It's like we want to accelerate the success, but use that momentum. I, for one, I think a lot about sort of natural systems. How can we not only restore the canopy that was lost, but improve our campus work here so we've got better spaces outside for wildlife and the rest of our stakeholders. Okay, we've got our contacts, and John will have the PowerPoint to share. I'll add others. Questions that you guys have or clarifications? Yes.
So I'm going to give this question of talking about the SIP project. The question I have myself: why weren't we able to? Why did we not consider switching over to geothermal or another carbon-free energy source when we transitioned away from coal, like in 2014?
It was the first step, right? So we went from coal to natural gas, knowing that natural gas is sort of a bridge to somewhere, bridge to a truly carbon-free resource. We talked about it, but that natural gas system that we put in, that investment in that infrastructure, we're still going to keep it as backup for our peak load, but it's also to buy us time because we know we've got further to go to get truly into renewable, you know, all the way through. But why? Probably because we were too early in our process. We knew we had like big issues to address. Let's knock down coal. Next thing was let's reduce natural gas as far as we can. We also weren't able to connect all buildings on campus. Right? And there are community buildings that are nearby. You know, Michael mentioned the hospital. They're like, yeah, like literally like the lines run right next to them. And some of it is the social connection, some of it is just being able to educate and work through some of the details on it. But there are additional, in hindsight, would be like, duh, like opportunities for us that we are poised to address.
But just to add on to that too, going back in time a little bit, honestly, the technology's come a long way. I mean, that was long enough ago when we switched when, I don't know, and Michael can speak more to this. I think that the efficiency of heat pump technology has improved considerably since then, and just from a cost perspective and all these things. I don't think we were ready. I don't think the technology or the world was ready for a transition when we did that natural gas. And, you know, as Chris says, it to some extent, it bought us time, and we knew it was buying us time. But one of the things that's important to understand about natural gas, even though all of us understand this is a fossil fuel, we can't have long-term fossil fuels anywhere doing anything. The fact is the carbon emissions intensity, how much carbon is released into the atmosphere per unit of heat delivered to a building, is much greater for coal. The particulate pollution, which is a killer across the country, is much worse from coal. So it was a massive improvement in system performance to switch from coal to natural gas, both in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and in terms of secondary health effects of it. So it was a huge step forward, but we knew absolutely at the time that it was an interim solution. It was not the long-term solution. Michael, I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
Yeah, I think what you said is accurate, John. I mean, there were some institutions who were doing geothermal as far back as 2012. Ball State started their system back then, but the technology has advanced so significantly since then, and just the knowledge level within the construction industry on how to implement these types of projects has advanced drastically in the last 10 years. So it definitely is different, and quite candidly, the college also gets to take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act rebates that weren't available back then, which make this even a more cost advantageous solution for the campus.
Let's go to someone else if anyone else has a question on it.
Yeah, I have a question about how Oberlin has like engaged and consulted in general, like city in the SIP project, and if like community voices has any effect on the attitudes towards this project.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to it, but I know that others in the group have lived experience, so I would sort of refer to them. I just know that there is an ongoing outreach and feedback. One of the things that come immediately to mind is related to the canopy loss experience. But you know, the ability to connect the system, what that looks like in the near term and the long term, is an ongoing challenge. But I didn't know if Heather, you were probably on council at the time.
Yeah.
Michael want to speak to that.
And Jenae, I'll defer to you in a second, but yes, this team, before I was here, I was on city council, and people from the college and Evergreen would come to city council meetings to present about the project, give updates, discuss any concerns the community had, particularly around canopy loss or street closures. Not sure if that answers your direct question about feedback or input. Jenae, do you have anything to add about community outreach?
I didn't fully hear the question. It was about community feedback from.
Yeah, I wanted to know if can you hear me?
Not
It's
really.
kind of low, but I'm trying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to know how has Oberlin College like engaged the general like city of Oberlin population in the SIP project. I also want to know if there is some sort of like timeline for integrating this like heat pump system across the town and not just for Oberlin College.
Do you want to answer that, Michael, or do you want me to?
We have when we were working on planning for this project, we actually studied a number of city buildings that could be connected to the geothermal system, and we made a fairly significant push to go in a few directions. To the new high school that building was designed to accommodate connecting to the geothermal, and we actually pursued a Department of Energy grant to be able to pay for getting the pipe over to the high school. We also pursued a Department of Energy grant in collaboration with the city to get pipes down South Main Street, down to City Hall and the library and the Performing Arts building and a couple other buildings on South Main. And then, as Chris noted, we've had extensive discussions with the hospital to connect them to the geothermal based system, because as Chris noted, our pipes run literally right past the building. And there's so many advantages to be able to get the hospital on the system. From an outreach and engagement perspective, we've had multiple community meetings, both during COVID, we were doing them virtually. after post-COVID, hosted a number of community events where we were able to tour people around the project, explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing it. We've also met with city council on a number of occasions. We meet with the city manager, with head of public works, with the city's sustainability department. We have very close collaboration with them. So it has been an ongoing effort of collaboration, both from a technical perspective to try to connect city buildings, as well as from just an outreach and engagement perspective to get the message out and to be able to answer any questions for folks, particularly when we're closing streets and causing some traffic disruptions, which nobody really likes to have happen. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, wait, sorry, has the feedback been positive? Just wondering.
Generally, it's been positive. There certainly have been times when it hasn't been positive. In the first year, when we started having cut down some trees, that was a real surprise for folks, and that was a time that we had to do a little bit more informing and education on what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think generally everybody's been very appreciative of the fact that we are so transparent, and we're open at any point to meet with folks and explain what's happening and answer any of their questions. So I would say it's probably been 80 to 90% positive, but there have been some times where, folks have been unhappy for, because they have to be rerouted from a traffic perspective, or again, when we were cutting down some trees, that nobody liked that, nor should they.
I see big old trees come down. That's a fact.
Just on the communications perspective, one of the things we did during the trees for the last 3 seasons was we actually had the people who were working on cutting down trees, they had little cards that had Chris's phone number on it. So we were trying to be really clear that the person that they were walking up to that was cutting down a tree was not the person who had to answer their questions. And so we did modify our communications methods based on feedback we got.
Suzette, you got a question?
Yeah, so I was wondering, like, if in the past you engaged with alumni, and if you have, like, what that's looked like.
So past engagement with alumni, Jenae, I know that we had alumni, it was a virtual presentation that we did, many of the same slides, kind of going through the overall and fielding questions, et cetera. Of course, at homecoming, we'll see more alumni, and we've had alumni attending other tours, not just at homecoming, throughout, in addition to the website and the printed material, et cetera, and articles and things we put out. So I don't know if there's other things that folks want to highlight.
The communications team at Oberlin has been just a fantastic partner to us, and they have someone who writes for the alumni magazine, and there have been some occasional updates through the project that have gone out to that group. So, and then obviously we've done updates in the digest on a regular basis, and I believe there's probably still some alumni that get that email as well.
And of course, almost all the trustees are alumni, so they were central in the whole decision making. I mean, this project would not have happened if the alumni on our board hadn't approved it and been in favor of it. So that's been one of our real touchstones. There's a committee, like I would say, from someone who's been here a long time, I would say we actually, before Evergreen was hired, we'd had, I think, at least 3, maybe 4 major studies in which we'd hired outside consulting firms to come in here, evaluate the campus, and propose ways that we could achieve carbon neutrality. Every one of those ended up on the shelf and didn't end up being implemented. I think the 2 keys in getting to a point where we hired a firm that actually did see us through to implementation were, 1, that we started with the trustees and understood that we need the trustees engaged in the decision-making process from step 1 so that they're helping us oversee that process. So that was absolutely key. And then I think the other big piece of this is in the RFP, the request for proposals that went out to firms, we made it very clear that the financing of the project, how we're going to pay for it, was every bit as central to the process that we were going to engage in as the technology. And so I think having the trustees centrally involved in that, frankly, having trustees who are on the finance committee involved in the carbon neutral planning committee, which is what we call the committee, was absolutely central. So you had your key decision makers who think and talk about money on the board involved in every step of the way with Evergreen and Oberlin College on this, was absolutely central to sort of getting to a place where it was not just another plan on the shelf.
I think I missed some of what was said when you guys were looking at like carbon-free energy solutions. The second best one was about the landfill.
That was the
generating-
best one.
The best one. What was the reason you guys didn't go with that? I missed that a little
The
bit.
owner operators changed their business plan.
But it really had to do with sort of national markets. In some ways, it's kind of sad, it's very sad in my mind that that solution didn't work out, because in many ways, I think it's preferable to what we did, even though I'm really excited about what we did. What happened was that California created a real market for basically carbon-free gas. And Michael, feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong here. But California basically created a market where people were incentivized to buy natural gas that was certified as being carbon-free natural gas, so not fracked natural gas, but natural gas that was coming from sources like biogas or landfill gas. The gas that gets generated in a landfill is considered carbon-free gas. And frankly, most of our electricity in Oberlin comes from landfill gas right now, just not from the Oberlin landfill. But it's considered carbon-free because that dump is basically has rotting materials in it that are decaying in an anaerobic environment and producing methane. And that methane is going to be produced whether you use it or not. So if you capture that methane and use that methane, that's CO2 that would otherwise end up in the atmosphere anyways. And if you can salvage it, if you can burn it to create heat or burn it to create electricity, that's like ideal because you're getting salvaged energy from it. But what happened was where they had been using it, burning it, creating electricity and creating waste heat as a byproduct that they were sending into the atmosphere, they figured out they could clean the gas and pump it into the pipeline and basically sell the credits for it out to California because there's a market for it out there. But the reason I thought it was the greatest possible solution is because they were already, just through the process of generating electricity out there, creating waste heat that was just going into the atmosphere and being wasted. So we would have essentially been able to heat Oberlin College with waste heat that was not being used for anything else. And that is like the best thing you can do in terms of energy recovery is use waste heat to do something. Like right now, we're not using that waste heat. Instead, we're using carbon-free electricity to drive our geothermal system here to produce heating and cooling on campus. So we're using a valuable energy source, electricity. True, it's carbon-free electricity, but it's valuable energy that could be used for other purposes as opposed to that heat out there, which you can only pump heat a short distance. So we could have gotten it from the landfill to campus, but it's not going to be going any further than that. So we were uniquely suited as an institution to take advantage of what was absolutely a complete waste product and turn it into something of value for Oberlin. And instead, we're now using carbon-free electricity, paying for that electricity, which costs a lot of money, and using electricity that someone could use for something else, but we're using it for us. So it is carbon-free, but it's not as good environmentally as if we've been taking advantage of waste heat. A little complicated, but I hope that made some sense. Or did I get anything wrong on that as far as you're concerned, Michael?
No, it was perfect.
I will just add that you'll hear this term, renewable natural gas. That is most often what it's referring to is that methane capture from a waste source, so organic matter, landfill, that kind of thing. But you'll likely hear that term. They seem to have landed on it for the moment. RNG, or renewable natural gas.
So not all natural gas is the same. Some natural gas, it's the same chemical, it's methane, but some natural gas is produced from fracking. That's fossil natural gas, as opposed to what comes out of a landfill or what comes out of a bioreactor, like a digester that you're using to basically break down organic matter in a wastewater treatment plant or from a farm. You can digest material and produce methane. That's green methane. So there's brown methane coming out from fracking and there's green methane. So like it's the same fuel source, but its origins and its carbon consequences are completely different.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Go ahead.
You talked briefly about diversity, equity, and inclusion with the Sustainable Infrastructure Program. And no pressure if this is more of a theoretical concept, but I'm just posing a question to everyone in the group here. Can you list any specific examples of how you're realizing that or how you're pursuing that?
I would be open to just, Jenae, I know that you led us with the PowerPoint, but some of the things that initially come to mind are gonna be about the sourcing as far as our subcontractors, percentage of employees working on the project, the ownership of subcontractor companies that are working. So if you've got minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, otherwise economically disadvantaged populations that are engaging in the project, sourcing material for the project. Those are typically where you're going to see these DEI aspects be met. There are other that, so you could track that, the spend in there, et cetera. But again, I think that our community engagement is an aspect. Our being available, our sharing information. It may not fall under classes under DEI, but I think when we talk about equity, inclusion, accessibility, the transparency that Michael and Jenae have referenced, I think is another way in which we are practicing this, and that we are listening to feedback, responding to feedback. If we can't take action immediately, the fact is that there's a conversation, it's a collaborative effort going on. Are there specifics that you guys would want to highlight?
I don't know if it was 2022 or 2023, but there was actually a contractor training on DEI that Joel Bates led. Is that 2022, Michael?
2022, yep.
Yeah, so there was some specific training for the on-site teams provided as well, so.
All right, we've held these guys longer than we originally had booked here, so unless there are any other super pressing questions, I want to let them get back to their work days. But I do want to express enormous appreciation for you guys coming in and talking with us. It's been super helpful to this class in understanding the project, and obviously we got another couple of weeks working with you on this to try to get ready for the homecoming. So this is the last we're seeing of you. So thanks so much, guys, for coming.
Anytime.
We are here, thanks.
Michael, thanks, Jenae.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Really excited to work with you guys. Thank you all for your attention and your engagement.
Thank you.
It's gonna be fun.
It is gonna be
All
fun.
right.
All right.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Take care.
This room is pretty hot here.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's partly that's so loud that I turn it off because the damn compressor is just so noisy that I think it's actually cooling down a little bit in here now, but it's hard because people always open the damn windows too. We really need, as we think through this building in the future, we've got to have, and this is probably true in every room, we need to have sensors on those windows. So if you open a window, it turns it off, because I come in here so often and the AC is running and the window right behind it is open. And it's like people just don't know, but also I think the system should not allow that to happen. Like every window should have like a switch on it where if you've got the window open, it won't come on, and you've got some signage that says, "Are you too hot in here? Shut the window." You know?
Right.
So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, that's great. All right, so I want you guys to just think for a moment and for us to do another go around of sort of like I'm gonna leave this thing on actually because we have a couple of this today, and I said I'd record this, so I'm gonna record the discussion as well. So I'm just leaving us on Zoom for the time meeting. But I want to take a chance to go around the room and for you to just, and I want this to be briefer than it was last time, so this is going to be quick, just like some insight you've gleaned from readings or discussion that you think is important to us, but it's going to be terse. So you got like 20 seconds to make your point. And I want to actually, and this is a practice that I've seen done well at various conferences. Before we do this, I want to take like a 30-second moment of silence for you to think about the presentation, about the readings, and think about a comment that you have to make that sort of you think is going to be important for our work in this class. Insight gleaned, an idea, anything, but it's going to have to be short. So let's just take a second. Let's take 30 seconds and think. All right, I'm gonna ask if there's someone who wants to start, but preferably someone who has not started previously. Right, so Stanley.
The main takeaway I thought was, I feel like what's lacking is the community engagement in the presentation. So I was wondering, like afterwards when they finish, the infrastructure and they're restoring the community, maybe involving students and community members as a way like a planting trees project. Cause I feel like that's less, dangerous than working with like construction, just more like planting trees, so.
So you're thinking of specifically some opportunity for sort of more hands-on, experiential engagement. Neat. We're gonna go this way because Nev had her head as well. Yeah.
I was also thinking about the community engagement aspect, and like getting the city of Oberlin further engaged in the SIP and like expanding the infrastructure to local buildings. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. You made some very good points about the methane capture system, and my project specifically is the one that's in middle schools where we're going through that exercise of analyzing resource use and thinking about that in the context of like sustainable projects. So the way that we're framing thinking what's the term, laterally, just thinking challenging preconceived notions to view it from another perspective, because you say the word methane use, it's hard from a certain point of view to ever view that as a positive thing necessarily. So just sort of that thinking about how to encourage that sort of mental flexibility with that specific project.
Remember, terse points here, good point, but yes.
Well, the presenters did some of this in their presentation, kind of like organizing the information as like, this was the old system and this is the new system. And I think that could be a good way to organize my communications about SIP in the future.
So you're thinking about how do you tell this, what's the best way to tell the story, and you're thinking there's some chronology that's useful.
I really appreciated how all of these presenters, including yourself, went through the intentionality in every phase of the project. It wasn't just like, oh, I thought that's a good idea, let's do that. I know that's not the case. We presented and it seems so simple, like, oh, we have this system, kind of like adding on to your side, we have the system, we're going to use system. I feel like it's helpful to explain the complexity with that and the intentional choices that were made along the way.
I'm interested in to see how this SIP affects the community further, and how we can spread this further across the community to put sustainable energy in Oberlin. And then since Oberlin's been a catalyst in the past, to see if this will like help nationwide movements to move to sustainable energy.
Right, so that question of how can we be catalytic? What are the opportunities to be catalytic with what we did at Oberlin beyond just this place?
I was interested in the marketing and messaging of the SIP project, the fact that they provided actual tangible benefits in the marketing with cost benefits and also like the saving in resources. I thought that was particularly effective.
The sort of like little summary statistics there, yeah.
I feel like this is obvious, but what you said in like the 3 pages you had us read is that geothermal system is both climate mitigation and adaptation, and I just thought that was useful, like buzz phrases to have in my mind.
Right, to think about the different sides of this. We're preparing for a hotter climate and we're mitigating at the same time, yeah.
I really like what Heather said about like wanting everyone on campus to be able to give like a basic explanation of the sustainable infrastructure program, like if somebody asked them. I just think that like, yeah, I just really liked that idea. I think that that would be super important for like everybody to have a basic understanding of it, just to like, I don't know, it kind of relates to that reading with the question is like environmental literacy. Does that like help promote pro-environmental behavior? So yeah, I just think that it would be really cool to see that happen. And I'm like wondering how we can make that happen.
Right, right. Me too.
Kind of similar to this one, but I feel like a lot of students' impression of this project is like negative because it's like hot, or like our water got shut off recently, and they've had a lot of like presence, like ugly like construction presence on campus. And they said that they were doing outreach, but it seems like they were only doing like positive marketing to like actual like stakeholders, and us focusing on students because students have come with say don't determine where tuition goes. So it would just be interesting to see something on it like sort of more negative, like the effects of more negative impacts of like the outreach point of view.
Oh.
Program and on the project. I think when we think about something that is being we kind of see like an endpoint site, but that is really important to like portray something that we're doing now. So like what comes next. And I think like generally, I think that's a really great framework for thinking about environmental issues. Setting these stepping stones for coming to approach this issue one big goal.
Yeah, boy, it's so much of what you guys communicated, I think, is so important and insightful. I was trying to resist responding to each of you, but yeah, really, really super important comments made. The issue of process, especially when we think about sort of, if we're gonna do some sort of long-term communication, communicating here, you know, stories, there's a difference between telling a story about, you know, like, so Jane's putting forward history. It's a good way to present a story. I completely agree with that. But concurrently on this idea, thinking about like, it's a story that has a history, but it's a story that's happening now, you know, and how do you balance those two of like, we got here, you know, going to Kamala Harris, we didn't fall, you know, it didn't fall out of a coconut tree. We got here, there was a process and sort of some of the appreciation for that explanation of like why choices were made along the way, how choices were made. But this is not done. This is something that's happening now. And I guess from my sort of vantage point, what's the role of sort of real-time data in helping us to communicate to people when they look at stuff on the screen? Yeah, we got here through a process, but it's happening right now and it's dynamic right now and we're moving towards something else. And maybe part of that something else is, you know, how are we providing an example? How are we providing examples for other places someplace else? I will say two things that sort of struck me, which it's not like they weren't already in my head, but struck me a little bit more in terms of storytelling based on, you know, just, and I've heard versions of this presentation before, but one was the financial story, which I feel like that's going to be interesting to some people to understand this the financial, because it is a big story. I mean, that's why we didn't do it earlier. That's why we did do it now. It's because the numbers ended up working for people who are decision makers. And, you know, as was mentioned, like most people don't understand the inflation, like the magnitude of how the Inflation Reduction Act is really transforming our economy in really positive ways towards a green economy. Most people are clueless. This is one example. This is how the IRA is causing good green things to happen that would not otherwise happen. It makes it more cost effective for us to do this project. And I feel like that's a story that almost no one on this campus has any inkling that you do have that.
No,
Yeah, it's like people need to know this. I think it's one of the, I would say one of the greatest failures, I would say, of the Biden administration. And I'm not blaming them, but I'm saying objectively it's a failure, is they passed the most important piece of climate change legislation ever. Much bigger than anything else that's ever been done before. And almost no one has any idea that that's a thing, you know, and it's a bummer, you know, because it's a complete communication failure. And again, I'm not situating blame with that, because I'm not quite sure what they could have or should have done, but it is a failure because people don't know it. So objectively, it's a failure. I don't know who's responsible for it or how it could have been different, but it's a failure, you know. Anyway, any more comments? I do want to reserve a little bit of time in the remaining class to have people get together in project groups, because we haven't had a chance to do that. Talk a little bit, and for me to race around between project groups and answer some questions, just because even though most of you are not going to kick into high gear on projects right now, I want you to at least begin to kick into gear on projects and start thinking about first steps and that sort of thing. So I'll answer a question first.
That's my question. I'm wondering, like, I know all projects are different, and we all have different timelines.
Yeah.
Like, generally, what is like the next step, and when about should we start?
Well,
Right, we
okay.
should start thinking about it today. When should we be done thinking about that, moving on to the next thing?
Right. So again, because of the particular communication opportunities this semester, I've like front loaded this whole SIP thing. And I do want all of us are in, even though there are two groups that are going to have a specific focus on SIP, it's just such a great opportunity. I want all of us to be involved. And that meant sort of like, you know, pushing the project proposals forward in time a little bit. But I want you guys, the syllabus describes the sort of sequence of events. So immediately after this SIP thing, but I want you thinking about it and working on it before then, meeting with your group. If you guys want to set office hours to meet with me, I'm psyched to meet with you to talk about like getting you kick-started on these projects. But there'll be proposals, there'll be presentations of those proposals, they'll be starting to work on that. And I think, again, why don't we get in our groups right now, and it's a little different for every project, and I can kind of race around between the groups and answer some questions and give you some information. So go ahead and assemble